Hi all, I have another very exciting game of Näcmetdinov to show you. We haven't seen one of his for a while, so I thought let's have a look at this one. 1956, his opponent was Alexander Mikhail Chistiakov. Now Chistiakov, according to ChessGames.com, he was born in Moscow. He was awarded the master title in 1938 and was the Moscow champion in 1950. Along with Yuri Averbach. So let's have a look. E4 from Rashid, and we see a French defense, and this actually goes into a variation of the French defense called, I believe, the McCutcheon variation. So bishop g5, bishop b4. Black responds with bishop b4 here. Counter pinning, we have e5, h6, and this is known to be okay for black, this line. It doesn't matter if a pawn lands on g7 because there's rook g8 after this counterplay. So one of the main book moves is actually not to take on f6 here, but actually to retreat the bishop. This is actually one of the more popular moves. So unpinning that absolute pin there. Knight fd7. Now the bishop has left g7. I remember Nigel Short joking about the French defence. The problem in some lines of the French is this pawn is neglected. We've got an aggressive pawn chain here as well. White just simply targets it with queen g4. The bishop goes back. You might think this is a waste of time. Time is crucial, but it is a closed position at the moment. Unless that status, closed open changes. With an open position, there's potential for more piece pressure, more direct threats, more concrete threats. Knight f3. Black now maybe shouldn't have played this c5. It does expose the idea of knight b5 coming to d6, which could be very, very handy, especially here with pressure on g7. And it's actually played because if we can get the bishop away from g7, of course we can take on g7. We see g6, which shows black's opening seems to be quite poor here. He's not really developing pieces, and he's playing against one of the most feared aggressive attacking players of all time. It doesn't help to not really develop pieces. Bishop d3 immediately does threaten. Bishop takes g6. This is really quite dangerous here. Black played another move which looks terrible, rook g8. But just to show this, for example, here there's a possibility even of bishop takes g6 in this position. This is already dangerous with queen e6, but even like knight d6 check is dangerous as well. So it's parried. I mean, you might think bishop e7, bishop takes g6. Remember, we're pinning that pawn, and say here there's a neat little trick which is worthy of note actually. In this position, a tactical trick. Can you spot it? White to play here. Actually, it's a pretty cute tactical idea. If I give you 5 seconds, what would you play with white in this position? Okay, knight d6 check. So not king f8, bishop takes h6 is crushing. So say takes, queen takes e6, and again the king doesn't want to go to f8. And if here, say then bishop takes, and we're winning that rook on g8, so getting back the material with interest at the very least. Yeah, it's a crushing tactical ideas, yeah, with knight d6 and this bishop takes g6. So we see this rook g8, so you might think black's out of his tree or something to be playing like this, but yeah, he is worried about bishop takes g6. So we see actually though now white trying to open up the position. So it was a closed position, like in the French defense usually they're often quite closed. We see c4, and this does kind of say I want to try and open up as many lines as possible. Okay, so we see c takes d4, c takes d5. Yes, white center is evaporating in the process of opening up the lines. At the moment white is threatening d6. We see knight c5 hitting the bishop on d3. White actually takes on d4, protecting that. Now there's no queen takes d5 because of knight c7 check. So black takes on d5. The position is more open than before. And this idea of, you know, being able to develop pieces, especially when it's an open position, it's more critical. Can white actually punish black now? When he plays knight d6 check, which opens up that e file, bishop takes, e takes at the cost of a pawn. But so what? Look at h6, that's unpraised. Look at the king, it's still in the center. Look at black's piece development, it's non-existent. Black takes on d3, queen takes d3. So white's pawn down, but with looks to be a very promising position otherwise. Knight c6, check, bishop e6. And then we see knight d4. So this is actually immediately threatening things like knight b5. Queen moves somewhere, and then bishop f4 with ideas of knight c7 and knight d6. So black actually stops some of this business by playing g5 to at least stop the bishop f4 stuff. But now we see rook ac1, and it's intriguing the pressure in this position, especially, you know, after that g5 has actually created some very subtle, intriguing resources here. If black responds with rook c8, can you see what white could play in this position? If I give you 5 seconds here, white to play, it's a very, very interesting tactical resource available. White could play queen h7. And if say rook g6, can you see what white can play here? White can dismantle black with his temporary queen sack, taking out the rook to be able to take here, ending up a bishop up. And if king f8, then this is just absolutely crushing for different reasons, like knight f5 coming into g7, taking on h6. g5 will drop later. So yeah, black has to be a bit careful about rook c8 and this queen h7 business. Plays actually king d7, which I know again looks strange. Knight f5 hitting the queen. Queen f8. Queen b5 hitting b7. We see black trying to defend now desperately with rook c8. That's taken, weakening c6 and other stuff. It also means other resources are unveiled in the position with the absence of that pawn. That's quite interesting. You know, this pawn provided resources here, but taking out this pawn makes bishop a5 in the future a lot stronger, as there'll be no b6. So queen b5, a6, not waiting for white to try and use the pin with, say, rook e5, rook takes d5. So trying to unpin as soon as possible. Queen d3, queen b8. And now, by the way, yes, also this knight, of course, you don't really want to take here because queen takes d5 check and then hitting the bishop after. So that knight's not really hanging here, by the way. So a6, queen d3, we see queen b8, knight takes h6, and it looks as though again black's trying to cling on with rook g6, but white really breaks through a lot of the defenses with this next move. This is a real breaking move for black's position. If I give you 5 seconds here, what would you play with white in this position? Okay, knight takes f7. Yeah, this e file is really emphasized actually with knight takes f7, getting the bishop to go back. So it does go back taking, but check. And it looks as though, hold on, has Näcmetdinov blundered? Because can't black protect that bishop? Hold on, has he blundered? King d8. No, not really. Because there's other crushing stuff in this position now. And this next move really takes away the defense of the black king from both sides of the board. This bishop, which is centralized, is pointing at a5 and g5. And both of these are potentially really dangerous checks to the black king on d8. The geometry is absolutely amazing of this game, by the way. Geometry. But this next move emphasizes this bishop quite dramatically. Can you see what white plays here? Crushing stuff. If I give you 5 seconds. Rook takes c6. First of all, it opens up the possibility of this check. Second of all, if this rook's leaving, then we got this check. So it's either a5 or g5, which is becoming a disaster. So black actually took with the c rook. If he takes with the g rook, as mentioned, there's things like bishop takes g5 here, and look how the queen and bishop are cooperating so well on these two diagonals with the rook. It's kind of, it looks absolutely winning. Black's just gonna have to give up the rook immediately and get mated shortly after. So the c rook was chosen, but now we have bishop a5 check. Yeah, it's just the flexibility of the bishop here to get to the king is remarkable. Now, if rook c7, then just queen takes f7, exploiting that pin and threatening rook e8 checkmate is pretty miserable for black. But this isn't much better. Queen c7, because can you see what white plays in here in this position? Okay, queen takes f7. That queen is pinned, and now we're threatening rook e8 checkmate. Or if the rook moves to pin, then we've got queen e8 checkmate. So here black, funny enough, resigned. Yeah, if rook c1, queen e8 checkmate. It's just a shocking, crushing game, really. If you might think rook e6, is that doing anything in this final position? Well, white could just win material at minimum, just take the queen and take the rook at minimum. But there's actually probably even stronger. But it's over anyway. Okay, so yeah, after queen takes f7, that's the end of the game. So Nężmetdinov playing against the French defense. It's curious because he really had to open up the position. It was kind of closed. Black's moves, sometimes, you know, when you see Tigran Petrosian play the French defense, he's not worried about undeveloping moves, but you know, he's keeping the position closed usually. Here the position was kind of rapidly opened up, and it's interesting how the pawn movements on both sides of the board led to quite intriguing resources respectively on both sides of the board, like with the queen potentially coming in over here, the bishop, you know, using a5 over here. You see that missing b pawn, how, you know, its presence is now felt, because otherwise there'll be things like b6. So yeah, taking these pawns out created very important tactical opportunities for white, which he expertly exploited. So I think he's one of the greatest tacticians of all time, and it's often been referred to as Mikhail Tal's trainer. This is really a sparkling game. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.